Hey folks, Malforian here, and today we're going to be covering Tinto Flavor 2. This is going to be covering Florence. If you're not sure what this is, I did a video last week on the first one of this series where Pavia every Friday is going to give us a breakdown of a certain region of the game, giving us some flavor information, what we should expect to launch. Not everything, but giving us that general overview. And this is the first proper one of these. And this dev diary is going to be kind of split in half. The first half, I think he calls it like structural flavor content. It's going to be the base systems, what has been built on top of those. And then the second half is more the events, characters, things like that, like additional flavor, story flavor really, for these nations. So you can keep that in mind as we go through this. He does talk about it in the middle of this dev diary and we will cover it there. But as I said, this one's going to be covering Florence. There is a little bit of a blurb here about Florence. I think we all know what Florence was if you are watching this video and playing Europa Universalis. Now he does go on to say here, and I'll put it on the screen at the moment, there are two elements that appear on the country selection screen. The first is the flavor immersion text that countries with unique content will have. I think that's that first bit of blurb you saw there, kind of giving you additional information about Florence in this example. And that is where you're going to be able to look at certain game concepts, to look at those, see if that's something you might want to play as. And then the second, which is the screenshot you're looking at now, is a country screenshot, which will show the name, flag, ruler, three elements, which will be the government type, the country type, and the country rank. I think that's the icons in the top right-hand corner. I believe that does make sense. And then also some background art. In this example, it is a courtroom illustration, which is a generic one for European countries, but it can potentially be unique to certain areas. And as always, Pavia calling out here, all the art you see is work in progress, the UI, the 2D and 3D art. This isn't finalized. I think the background art probably will be finalized, but I think the character models will get another update, and the UI itself, I mean, definitely will. I can't believe it would launch looking like this. We've discussed that in many videos, so we won't talk about it too much here, but the UI is going to get a brush up before the actual game comes out. Next, we're going to be looking at the map of Italy, and obviously Florence in the middle there. I do like how the map looks. Bit of a mix between Europa Universalis and Imperator Rome. I do like the colors. I like how bold it is. This is obviously very zoomed in and probably edited slightly, I would think, but this is what we should really expect as we look at Tuscany. Next is going to show off the Republic of Florence is a Signoria, which is a unique major government reform for the Italian countries, and you can see the example here when it can be implemented and then the effects this has. So monthly progress to decentralization, crown power is reduced, replace cabinet member is cheaper, and improve relations is better. And this is a specific Italian form of city republican government. Power is concentrated in the form of the signor, probably butchering how that should be said, but that is what I'm going to call it. These individuals are elected for a specific period of time, usually from the most influential members of the city, but in many cases there are also foreign rulers who are invited to take this role. Next is going to show off the succession law, and this is elective podestate. I'm probably butchering that as well. It is a type of succession law of a republic in which the ruler is selected from a country that has presence in the region of its capital, and you can see the eligibility rules there as well. Eligible characters are ranked as follows, and then Florence also has a unique estate privilege for its senate and the flavor name of nobility for republics, the Signoria Council, and you can see what that does here. Maximum tax for noble estate minus 10%, stability decay 0.5%. Florence will also have a unique estate privilege for the burghers called Florence Guilds. Monthly progress to plutocracy 0.10, monthly inflation 0.02%, bank interest 1%. That monthly inflation barely seems worth having on there, but a bit of flavor text there as well. This also unlocks a unique socio-economic law, the primacy of the Florentine guilds, where you can pick one of three different policies to embrace, promoting one of the three different types of guild. And you can see that law here, the effects it has, and then also, as Pavia said, that unlocks these three policies, and Pavia is going to show them off here. I'm not going to try pronounce them again, my Italian not so good, but you can see the different effects these have, and you can pick one of these, and that is going to kind of help your realm build in a certain way. It's going to help you towards certain goals. And again, you can see which ones would have what effects there. Florence also has another unique policy for the legal code law, and you can see that on the screen now. A lot of screenshots in this dev diary, so you can look at these whilst I'm babbling along. So noble power plus 5%, burghers power plus 5%, peasant estate minus 20% for their equilibrium, and then cabinet seats plus 1. That would help you quite a bit, I would think. This is a policy of the legal code law, and it will take a long time to implement, and that is something you might want to implement or retract if it's already in place when you do start as Florence. Florence also has unique advances, 13 in total, spread across different ages, of which they're going to show a few of them here. So as he talked about last week about where different flavor is going to be in the game, this is one of the areas, the advances that they said there's going to be some of these changes to really allow these realms to play a little bit differently from each other. So you can see the first one here, fine cloth output 10%. Obviously very thematic for Florence. The next one is available in the Age of Traditions, tax efficiency plus 10%, expected cost of court minus 1%. I'm not sure how much that will change, but there you go, that is what it is. And then the last one is the Citizen Militia Monthly Army Tradition 0.03. Again, all of these could be balanced before launch, but that is what it shows at the moment. And this unlocks Florentine's Citizen Militia Army Levies. So this is something we did talk about last week, where army units, it looks like we're going to get a lot more variety in the army units. This looks like a special version of militia units for Florence. The next advance allows you to build a special building, the Uffizi. That is how I'm going to pronounce it. And this is a valuable source of centralized power whilst preserving and displaying various works of art. So I guess this is where you're going to put a lot of special art in there. And as they're going to cover later on, as Florence, you're going to have quite a bit of art because of some relatively famous people who are going to be around that area at this time of the game. And then going back to the Citizen Militia, this is a unique type of army levy unit, as we were thinking about earlier. So 2% of valid population can be raised as Citizen Militia, and there are no modifiers impacting this. I guess maybe for the normal militia there is a modifier. I'm not too sure what the exact difference is going to be there. And then you can see the actual unit itself, the Florentine Citizen Militia. You can see what it requires for construction, basically recruitment, and then what is required for the maintenance of it. And then all the modifiers you can see on the right hand side. So it looks like a pretty good unit. We haven't really seen a lot of the unit stats for these kinds of units, so I don't think it differs that much from normal militia. But again, it's cool to see these special units. And this is just Florence. Imagine when we get to like France, England, Prussia, these different places, I imagine they're going to have a bunch of units like this. So it's going to be cool to see what those look like as well. And then going back to the Uffizi, you're actually going to see what this looks like on the screen now. So this gives you crown power plus 5% and cultural influence 0.3 as well. The required production method, that is what you need to keep the building working at like 100%. You need to hit all those requirements. Costs a lot to build, it takes a year to build, and then the actual construction requirements are there as well. It does look like it gives jobs to 200 people, so it does look like it's going to be a pretty worthwhile building. And with that, that is the structural content, as you can see here that he's talking about. That is types of content that would usually show up and could be checked when starting a new game and digging and hovering over the different panels in the game. So basically the content you can see immediately as you're clicking around the nations, thinking who you're going to play as. You're going to be able to see these in the UI. What are the special kind of content flavor for this realm? Oh, I might be interested in playing with them. And then next is going to cover the narrative content. He does call out here, although they will usually have a minimum amount of structural content and narrative content for each country with unique flavor, it's widely diverse. So some countries will have more structural flavor. So again, buildings, policies, advances, things like units, things like that. And then some countries will have way more narrative content, some more events. I think that is something we probably would have guessed at anyway. Some countries probably don't have as much unique, like, you know, building flavor or even unit flavor about them, but they had a lot of cool things that happened to them. And that is where the difference is going to be. And the first thing he's going to cover is disasters. And he says here, Florence can suffer 2 disasters during the game, an outlier in the game. So I guess that means usually there aren't 2 special flavor disasters. I presume that's what it means anyway. You may see that they have some associated effects as long as they are active, and that they will also have associated events that could trigger 8 for the first one and 13 for the second one. Here is the first one, a revolt. So this is a 5% chance to appear. So that's quite a lot actually as you tick through the game. And you can see here the Republic of Florence gains these modifiers. Pretty bad modifiers if this happens. It is a revolt, so that does make sense. And then you can see on the screen now the requirements for this disaster to activate. If you're not sure exactly what the disaster system is, that was covered in a previous dev diary. So that is one disaster that can happen pretty much immediately. And then in the next screenshot, you can see the end requirements for this. And then each month there are these events that can happen. 6% chance for a bunch of them, or 62% chance nothing happens. So there's actually quite a high chance once you're in this revolt of nothing happening event-wise. But then every month there is a chance for one of these events to happen. Again, if you've played Europa Universalis 4, you've kind of seen how this will work out for you. It doesn't look like they've changed it a whole bunch. You know, you're not going to be thrown off by this if you have played EU4 before. And then the second disaster, as he was talking about earlier, the rise of Savonarola. Again, apologies if I've butchered that pronunciation. The Republic of Florence gains monthly progress to traditionalist, 0.2, and then estate satisfaction and stability investment have also got negative modifiers. And this will end when either this guy is dead or you have a theocracy, and you can see the requirements here for hitting that. And then the next screenshot, you can see the actual event when it comes up. So an upstart preacher, I don't actually know about this. This is probably something I need to read up about, but this is obviously based on historical things that happened. And he was obviously historically somebody who rose up in Florence. And you can see a bunch of options here. Invite him in, or I guess the second option is kick him out. So the first one, you can see the event option here. Our clergy gain 5% satisfaction. We gain 5 prestige. We can change societal values by 2 towards traditionalists. And then you can see here the rise of this event again. You can see the monk there. You can see the cool art in the background we've seen before. And then similar to the previous one, how the events will happen as this goes through. And then besides disasters, there are a bunch of interesting flavor dynamic historical events that can happen to Florence, of which they're going to show us a bunch of here. The first is the creation of the Medici Bank in the form of a building-based country ruled by a member of that family, of course. Again, if you've not been following along with EU5, you can have these building-based countries where literally as a banking kind of country, you just build banks around Europe, for example, and then you can fund wars, stuff like that, and it's all about just making money. And that is literally what your kind of country does. But you're really just like a banking empire within that area of the map. But you can see here, the bank here, the chairman of the bank, and then some information about it in game, and then also historical what happened with this in real life. And then as part of this, the event will create a building in the location of Florence, a bank, the Bank of the Medici. And you can see that here as well. It employs 100 people. It gives you some trade advantage, some tax base as well. And then the level this building is, I guess you can build it even better if you are playing as this kind of realm. As this will split out from Florence, but it will still be in Florence. And you can see that here, the Bank of the Medici. This is a country, even though it is a bank. Again, that was covered in earlier dev diaries. And you can see it does list the things here, the ruler, the religion, the culture, the population, the tax base. Obviously, the population wouldn't really take effect here. And you can see the other things at the bottom here. So it has an opinion of Florence. It is in the HRE. It is in the Catholic Church. And on top of that, 2 more banking countries are starting in Florence in 1337. The Bank of Peruzzi and Bardi. And again, a little icon here for those banks. There are some more events related to the Medici's rise of power in Florence, but they're not going to spoil it too much here. They're probably building it as well, but that is the start of it and some of the events that are here. And then, as we know previously, we are going to get historical characters in this game, and Pavia is going to show some of them off here. So an interesting historical character in Florence's 14th century, Sir John Hawkwood, an infamous condottiere, and he looks pretty cool. I actually like how this 3D art looks for this character. Some of the 3D art has looked a little bit weird, but I actually quite like this. I like the shiny armor and his cool hat, obviously. And then some historical information there. You can hire him, or our pockets are not deep enough. You could just tell him to sling his hook and get out of here. If you do hire him, though, you get the White Company. This is a mercenary force led by this chap. And from Florence, you'll gain 15 infantry regiments and 5 cavalry regiments. So probably are going to want to hire this guy if you can afford it. They also have some historical famous artists from the Florentine Renaissance. And you can see here the first one, the first modern historian, Leonardo, not that one. It is Leonardo Bruni, and again, some information here about what he did. An interesting individual, let's bring him to the court, or again, no, we don't have the money to pay for this guy, get out of here. And then I guess he goes to a different realm maybe and sets up shop there. I'm not too sure actually how that's going to work. The second one, a probably more famous Leonardo, to a lot of people anyway, and that is Leonardo da Vinci, looking okay here in the art. I like the background though, that is pretty cool. And obviously we all know who Leonardo da Vinci was, and again, a true Renaissance man, or we don't need such men in the court. You can say join us, or I don't want to do that. The next one is Donato. I'm not going to try to pronounce his full name, but he's more commonly known as Donatello, not the turtle. But again, another pretty famous artist, and the same as Leonardo, you can hire him or get rid of him as well. And Pavia ending that bit by saying, yes, you can have 2 Ninja Turtles as Florence. Besides characters though, there are some events related to buildings specific to Florence. The first one being a cathedral, which may also get a specific work of art for Florence as well. And you can see this here, this is going to be a grand cathedral in Florence, and the different options you can see. And then if you do make this, you get this special piece of art as well, which is a magnum opus, which I think is the highest tier of art, if I remember from that dev diary as well. So that does look pretty cool. And with that, guys, that is the end of the Florence dev diary. But that isn't the end of the flavor content coming for Florence. As Pavia points out at the end, there's much more coming for launch. There's dozens of unique flavor events, but that is enough for him to kind of show us on this first dev diary. I'm not sure if we're going to see much more of this before launch. I don't think so from what he says here. I think through this series, he's just going to give us a brief overview. As I said at the beginning, here's roughly what you're going to see, some of the call outs of good things, but there's going to be a bunch for you to find out when the game launches. He does say here next week they're going to talk about Novgorod. I would imagine the bigger ones like France, England, China, Japan. I think we'll probably get those later in this series, maybe. Maybe like 1 in 5 is going to be the huge nations. And then in between, we're going to get the smaller nations and things like that. We'll see, though. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Does this look good? Does it look bad? Does it look different enough from EU4? Everything doesn't have to be crazy different. But is this really what you were expecting? Do let me know. Hit that like button if you've enjoyed it. Subscribe if you are new here. I'm covering EU5 up to official announcement, launch and beyond. And I cover Crusader Kings in a very similar manner if you do enjoy this video. But we'll leave it there for today, and I'll see you in the next one.